How old is your daughter?
7.
Well, I'm set to turn 7, but I'm 6.
What is your daughter's blood type?
You don't know.
Sir, you're gonna have to forfeit the shirt. Has your daughter ever played an instrument?
No.
That's wrong. I played the piano.
Oh, that's right.
How long did you play the piano for?
Ooh, like 5 years?
Does that sound familiar now?
Yeah, it sounds very familiar.
2 minutes ago, I asked you what your son's birthday is, and he told you. What is your son's birthday?
If I answer that, if I didn't know that, I'd feel stupid, and I wouldn't want to say an answer that's going to make. It was September the first.
Fathers, for those of you who are unfamiliar, are the people who fall asleep on the couch after dinner while your mother lists which of your cousins gained the most weight. But being a dad, it's not easy. The thing they don't tell you about fatherhood is that for like an hour a day, you have to get on the floor and pretend to be a horse. But we came up with something fun in honor of this special day. We wanted to put some dads to the test. So we went on the street and we asked them to answer basic questions about their children in our first ever pop quiz.
Are you and your son pretty close?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah? And would you consider yourself a pretty involved parent?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So I'm just going to ask you some questions about your son.
Right.
And just answer them to the best of your ability.
I will
okay?
do, no problem.
Very good.
Yeah.
What is your son's birthday?
No, that's a good one. That's a really good one, because I don't know.
You really don't know his
No,
birthday?
I don't know his birthday.
Do you consider you guys pretty close?
Yeah,
What is your daughter's favorite subject in school?
social study.
Is that true?
No.
What grade is your daughter going into?
9th grade.
What's the name of your daughter's school?
Ash Creek Elementary School.
No,
River Creek.
no,
Something Creek.
no.
What color are your daughter's eyes?
Brown.
All right, let's look. That is incorrect.
They're blue. I have a brown-eyed daughter, though.
What is your daughter's birthday?
May 17th. Oh, no, it's the 14th, and I don't know what year.
Can you name your daughter's teacher?
Mrs. Jones.
Nope.
Mrs. Moore. Is not Moore?
Nope. That was my elementary school teacher.
Can you name their teachers?
Of course I cannot.
What are your daughter's birthdays?
Why do you do this to me?
What about her?
I give up.
Any guesses?
Oh yeah, yesterday! Horrible.
Her birthday was yesterday. and you
Just
forgot
yesterday, yes.
it. Can you name the best friend of each of your daughters?
Mari Carmen Rojas, Jimena Lopez, Adamari Lopez, Cristina Cornejo.
Good. Can you give us the name of their doctor?
Fadi Torres.
Good. Can you give us the name of their dentist?
Games Dental Land.
What are your daughter's birthdays?
Yes, May 28, 2009, August 8, 2013, February 24, 2006, June 8, 2006.
Better luck next year.
Maggie.
Yes.
Hebu ongea na Vincent.
Hello. Hello.
Pia ongea.
Habari ya saa hizi?
Nzuri sana.
Ni mara ngapi nikuambia mambo ya mtoto?
Nikwambia umlete.
Ha?
Nikwambia umlete sasa wewe.
Umlete ama nilikwambia mtoto ni mdogo, ushughulikie mtoto akifika age alafu ninakuletea. Ushaishughulikia tangu muda yote. Tangu mtoto akiwa na miezi 9 sasa hivi mtoto anaelekea miaka 4. Sikusikii poa.
Nilikwambia ukuje. Pango ninamsaidia ama nikwambiaje?
Tupange ama unanitumia tu alafu tunashughulikia mtoto. Tena nikuje huko nitupange.
Bwana, lazima ndio wapi tunashughulikia mtoto mwenyewe.
Lakini my dear, huwezi kuletewa mtoto hujawahi hata kumuona hata kwa macho hata siku moja. Don't you think it's unfair for the child? Anapelekwa kwa stranger. Surely.
Yata anakuja hakuishi huko Ili mwambie akuje nini mtoto na tupange naweza msaidia kama anaenda shule, kama anaenda tunaweza akuje.
Mbona wewe usiende aliko?
Nataka kuja tupange.
Ngoja, mbona wewe usiende pale alipo?
Sasa uko
Vincent, mbona unakuwa unfair? Ni rahisi vipi mtu kuchukua mtoto a travel na yeye na wewe mtu mmoja utravel uje kwenye waliko? Gani ni rahisi kati hizo mbili?
Sawa.
I mean, fanya jukumika wewe kama unasema lazima uone mtoto kwanza kabla umsaidie.
Anasemanga tu hivyo hajai kuja. Nikimwambia kuja anasema tu hivyo atakuja.
Na sasa si tuchukue tu sheria sasa. Kama akusikie mnaelewana, ni nini mnashindana mkisumbuana? Ndio maana kuna
kusumbuana. Mimi naambia tu akete. Alafu nikishamuona kitu tutaona vile.
Sasa wewe ndio utaenda kama mwenzangu alivyokuambia. Sawa, wewe ndio utaenda. Na hiyo pande yako ni ile pande ya Wajakoya?
Hapana.
Indangalasia.
Kwa kwenyewe.
Ati?
Hapo ndo kwa Jakoya kwenyewe sasa. Mimi natoka huko.
Kwa hivyo sura yako ilikuwa ya Wajakoya?
Kabisa.
Mama watu Wajakoya. Vincent, lakini si vizuri kama wewe unaishi na mtoto wako hata ujui anakula nini, anaishi vipi, anavaa nini. Kusema tu ukweli.
Wewe tamsaidiaje na muona zinda kwa nasaidia?
Na si wewe uchukue jukumu la kwenda kuangalia. Mbona wewe unataka uletwe mtoto? Kwani mtoto ni kijiko? And she explained that when they were young, baba yao alikuwa haonekani kwa nyumba. He was always working. He was always going out of town. Ni sawa alikuwa yatafuta, lakini akasema in the end hawana emotional connection na baba yao. Wow. They don't know what to talk about. Akiingia kwa room akiketi hawajui watazungumza nini. Sasa hiyo ilikuwa thread yake. Sasa ile ambayo ilikuwa the most touching. After hiyo thread yake, yes. Watu hivi. Everyone was explaining how their father is a stranger to them. Wow. They have grown up. Their father was a provider.
Yeah.
Alikuwa na provide kweli na walipea nini chochote, hawakukosa kitu. Lakini hawana emotional connection.
Yeah.
So that sasa hiyo wamekuwa watu wazima, hawajui watakaoongea nini. They don't know what to talk about. Kuna mmoja alikuwa anasema babake huyo wa beg waje kwa nyumba, cause hata wakija kuvisit they don't stay in the house. Wako huko nje na mama yao na chapa story nini, then wanachapaka wanaenda. So baba yao was asking, mbona hampendi kuingia hapa kwa nyumba tukae na nyinyi? Sasa hawajui wamwambie kuwa daddy, we don't even know what to do. You don't know us. Hautujui. In your head we are still those young children that you used to see on the weekends ukikuja kutoka different cities where you used to work.
Yeah.
But we are not. We are different people. So in the journey ya kukuza watoto, baba yao hakumake an effort ya kujua mtoto wangu ni nani. Who are they? What do they think? Are they as smart as I am? Are they as smart as their mother?
Challenges
do
zao
they
ni
have
gani?
Challenges zao ni gani?
Yeah.
Interests zao ni gani? Wanapenda nini? Walikuwa hawajui. And it was really a sad thing because that woman said it gets very lonely for men at the end of their lives.
Wow.
Alikuwa na feel so much for the father because anasema it gets very lonely for men at the end of their lives because during their youthful years they spend their time kweli toiling for the family. Lakini toiling si kila kitu.
Or even perambulating.
Wanasema toiling si kila kitu, but at the end of the day you need to know your children. You need to know who they are as individuals.
it's okay to be a man.
It's not okay. It's necessary. What the hell are we going to do without men? You look around the city here, you see all these buildings go up. These men, they're doing impossible things. They're under the streets, working on the sewers. They're up on the power lines in the storms and the rain. They're keeping this impossible infrastructure functioning. This thing that works in a miraculous manner. They work themselves to death. And often, literally, the gratitude for that is sorely lacking, especially among the people who should be most grateful. You see university professors, especially of the social justice bent, they take everything they have for granted, failing to understand entirely that there's a massive infrastructure of unbelievably hardworking, solidly laboring, working-class men breaking themselves in half on a regular basis, making sure that everything that always breaks works.
Life with a hard-working man falls asleep in the recliner holding a full-ass bowl of food.
But when I get lonely, I do. Your memory gets to burning, laying back on the bourbon. So as hell can't keep leaning on you. Looks like I'm learning the hard way again. It's all my fault. Yeah, I dropped the ball. You're gone and I'm gone, 3 seats to the wind. Thinking about all I've
You see, those were women speaking, and if you randomly sampled a different set of women and gave them the context of the discussion, it would go the exact same way it did. Why is the gender of the presenters important? For a number of reasons. 1. For women, very few things in their lives are more important than emotions, emotional connections, and relationships. The importance of relationships and connections to women is perfectly explained by studies that document men's and women's presentation of the self. Particularly, women are more likely to explain their self in reference to relationships they have formed, while men are more likely to assume an autonomy approach in their presentation of the self. Studies on aggression also document the importance of relationships to women. Common knowledge dictates that men value dominance while women value relationships. Aggression often encompasses strategies aimed at causing harm to an individual. Men and women predominantly express aggression differently based on what each gender values. Men, who value physical dominance, are more likely to be physically aggressive, while women, who value relationships, are more likely to be relationally aggressive. Physical aggression mostly consists of inflicting physical pain, while relational aggression focuses on the destruction of relationships, with common strategies including silent treatment, stonewalling, and spreading rumors. Again, if you ask women, there are very few things in this life that are as important as or more than relationships. 2. There's this general feeling in society, most commonly exhibited by women, that women are the primary parents while men are the secondary parents. This feeling, and the resultant conversations surrounding the same, have a large biological backing in which women carry pregnancies that bring children to this world and they spend a considerable amount of time with them, especially in their first years of life. The whole birthing process and the bonding in the first years of life leads to the widespread assumption that women are the primary parents while men are the secondary ones. As a result, women are then assumed to be better placed to know what is best for the child compared to men. Men in this case are alienated from his own family as justified by him being the secondary parent and not as important as the mother. All this results in the belief that women, and only women, know what is right for the child. Whichever parenting style they see fit is the only one that suits the child, you know, mom knows best. So, women believe that their empathetic parenting style largely based on emotions and connections is what is best for children, with any other thing being wrong. There are very many parenting styles depending on the source you look at, but all of them are often categorized into 4, namely, authoritarian, permissive, disengaged, and supportive styles. Authoritarian parents spell out exactly what is required of children, with common reasons offered for instructions including, because I said so or just do it. The parents set rules and enforce boundaries, which focus on regulating children's behavior and developmental patterns. A positive commonly associated with authoritarian parenting include raising obedient children who know and follow the rules. The negatives include low sense of self-worth for children, Overdependence on others to make decisions or solve problems, and lack of support with high expectations could be detrimental to the learning capabilities of children. Parents who adopt the permissive parenting style are warm, supportive, and subject their children to little to no discipline. The parents give in to their children's demands easily as they rarely set limits, neither do they enforce them. As a result, permissive parents allow their children to behave badly, even when it affects others. The positives of permissive parenting include children grow up feeling loved and close to their parents. The negatives of permissive parenting include raising insecure children because of lacking boundaries, inappropriate behavior in children because of lacking discipline, and parents do not provide the appropriate structures for children to excel in school. Disengaged parents take little interest in their children, focus more on providing basic needs as opposed to being affectionate to them, and are therefore rarely involved in disciplining children. The children who are brought with the disengaged parents are less likely to feel loved, becoming socially withdrawn due to lacking social skills, and parents may not have as high expectations for their children. The only and rarely highlighted positive of disengaged parents is raising independent children who start making decisions and solving problems early on with little to no guidance. Parents who adopt the supportive style are involved, predictable, reasonable, and calm. The support element of the parenting style encompasses listening to children, allowing children to learn through mistakes, understanding children's temperaments, acknowledging the impact of age on development, and responding to situations based on the needs of the child. Children who grow up with supportive parents are emotionally mature and have the appropriate socialization skills. If not carefully considered, children raised by supportive parents could be overdependent, which is not good for both the children and the parents, especially in the children's adult years. The role of the media in this case has been reinforcing the thought that women's parenting style is the best for children in long term and men's is detrimental. As demonstrated, all parenting styles have their negatives and positives. A lot of parenting style sources advocated for hybrid or blended parenting styles because of the negatives associated with independent styles. Blended parenting styles ensure that the shortcomings of one style are covered by another. For example, the fact that disengaged parents make children feel unloved is balanced by a supportive parent who makes children feel loved. Similarly, the independence component of disengaged parenting offsets the overdependence threat of supportive parenting. It is impossible for one parent, either the mother or the father, to apply a hybrid parenting style, which comes from both parents operating as a unit. Both parents operating as a unit in this case, and in the context of this video, requires good mothers. If you're not a good mother, this is not for you. To explain to children why they take up most of the emotion work while fathers take up most of the resource work. A good mother in this case ascertains that children are well aware of the sacrifices of their father and the consequences of those sacrifices, and how then those sacrifices enable her to do what she does. You know, just tell children the truth. But knowing a majority of these mothers out here, why would they do that if by failing to do they become the center of everything as they age? Socially, the feeling of women being primary parents and men being secondary parents informs the constant categorization of women and children, most commonly as innocent, especially in emergency situations. Legally, the feeling of women being primary and men being secondary parents guides the prioritization of women when it comes to children's custody in the case of separation. A common argument to support the award of children to women and financial responsibilities to men revolves around men spending limited time with children to begin with, and as such, it is deemed as only fair to award custody to women. It is worth pointing out that while men are being criticized for spending limited time with their children, very limited is being done to change that. Apart from the fact that women are constantly awarded custody in family court, men's and women's parental leaves once children have arrived differ significantly in favor of women based on the feeling that women are the primary while men are the secondary parents. This article by the BBC suggests that the number of countries where paternity leave is enshrined in law has more than doubled to about 90 in the last 20 years, and globally, at least 4 out of every 10 organizations are thought to provide paid leave above the statutory minimum. Yet, the proportion of men who take more than a few days off work when their child is born is tiny. Most cite fears of being discriminated against professionally, missing out on pay rises and promotions, being marginalized or even mocked as reasons for not taking time off. Academics consider these concerns to be the effect of deeply ingrained and highly damaging stereotypes around gender, and suggest that changing this will require significant cultural shifts as well as better institutional provision of paid paternity leave. Women are no longer seen as less competent than men, but women continue to be seen as more communal, warm, nurturing and caring than men and, in turn, as more suitable for roles that require these attributes such as childcare. Men, on the other hand, continue to be seen as more agentic, decisive, assertive, competitive. In categorizing unions into egalitarian couples, with a sufficiently low gender wage gap, intermediate gap couples, with an intermediate gender wage gap, and high gap couples, with a sufficiently high gender wage gap, egalitarian couples never specialize in home production while intermediate and high gaps couples like such arrangements. An expansion in paternity leave reduces the net benefits from the agreement and moves the intermediate gap couples to their outside option where women work more and men do more home production. As a result, the cost of raising children increases and fertility declines. Assuming a loss of utility from children in the case of divorce, lower fertility increases the probability of divorce. In simple terms, men taking up paternity leaves raises the risk of divorce. While traditional gender roles are deemed to be demeaning and discriminatory for women, the same is not said for men. For example, it is normal for modern women to want traditional men who provide for their families, but men wanting traditional homemaking wives is increasingly becoming controversial. Modern women both fight and embrace gender roles depending on how they stand to benefit, implying that female perceptions of gender roles are context-specific. When it comes to the award of custody in family court, women are more than willing to be the nurturers nature shaped them out to be, but when it comes to working in corporate life, then they can do what men can do and even better, while heavily relying on affirmative action. This kind of attitude birthed and nurtured by feminism has led to women believing they can have it all without the man, but when that is actually tested in real life and they're stretched, then men are the problem. While women exercise choice in being homemakers or taking up traditionally masculine roles, men are not afforded the same. Men are coerced into taking up traditionally female roles directly and indirectly. Indirectly by associating men taking up traditionally female roles with being romantic or a gentleman, and directly through relational aggression strategies such as silent treatment and withdrawing sex. Women embracing their traditional gender roles when it comes to children implies that the relegation of men to being sperm donors and cash machines is inevitable. While societies are working towards, quote, liberating women from their traditional gender roles, men are constantly reminded that part of being manly is providing and protecting. In the context of families, traditional gender roles have proven to be sustainable for families and societies in general throughout human history, until they were perceived as discriminatory or unequal less than a century ago. The theory of comparative advantage supports the importance of dividing roles in a family unit for the success of a union. The theory acknowledges that boys and girls are raised differently in terms of union-related specialization, and as such, traditional setups involve women assuming homemaking responsibilities while men take up the breadwinning ones. Men with relatively high earnings potential gain more from marriage than men with relatively low earnings potential, not only because of the higher level of their income but also because of greater gains from specialization within marriage, since their mates have a comparative advantage in specializing in non-market investments. There is a consolidated effort across various spheres of society, especially by radical feminism-oriented women, to discredit men, paint their contributions to families and society as bare minimum, and amplify their shortcomings. As you have gathered from the recordings, men providing for their families, especially their children, is so important until men are actually doing it, then it's not good enough anymore. On the one hand, they have a complete segment in the show to tell men to support their children, most important in this case being financial. On the other hand, to the men who were providing, that is not good enough, so they should do even more. While men are constantly told that they should be providers and providing is not enough because children need emotional connections with their parents, no one ever tells women, especially stay-at-home wives and moms, that apart from the emotional connections with their children, those children need money. Again, part of the efforts towards the presentation of what women do in families is more important than what men do for families. The choice of preposition in this case being deliberate to reflect the presentation of families as being built around women while men are outsiders. Men are told money is never enough when raising children, while women are never told emotional connections are not enough. In a family with a single income, the working member, who is mostly the man, has to work extra hours. This is what married men's working hours looks like relative to single fathers and married women's hours compared to single mothers. The people who constitute the graph at the bottom are telling those in the graph at the top that they are not doing enough for their families, completely oblivious of the fact that their availability is a direct consequence of their unavailability. Married men working all these hours facilitates married women being more available for their families, even more so in the context of stay-at-home moms. Whichever way you want to look at it, mother's availability is a direct consequence of father's unavailability. You see, the people at the top graph literally work themselves to death, year in year out, with little to no appreciation, at least from the people they do it for, and somehow, they're expected to do more. Good luck not appreciating women for literally being women and then expecting them to do anything. Mothers always win because they are with the children all the time, because this availability is financed by the fathers of the children. Otherwise she won't be as available, as evidenced by the availability of single mothers who have to work more compared to married mothers who work less. Everything women do, especially in the context of families, is sacrifice, while everything men do is selfish and in pursuit of power. Men sacrificing their relationships with their children to make sure they never lack anything isn't sacrifice enough, but women benefiting from that sacrifice is the ultimate sacrifice that not only requires recognition but also rewarding, especially by children once they're all grown up. If shortcomings are wrong, then the shortcomings of mother's availability and father's unavailability make both of them wrong. Men being unavailable implies that they cannot form relationships with their children as their mother would because she is available. In similar breath, women being available implies that they cannot provide for their children as their father would by being unavailable. This evidenced by the fact that child support exists, and the show from which the recordings have been taken from has a segment called Deadbeat, where on the direction of single mothers, the hosts call their children's fathers to ask them for support on behalf of the women. Modern women understand the difficulty and complexity of having to provide and being emotionally available for their children when they're single mothers, but that's where it ends. When it gets to men, then they should do it easily. To those who are comfortable telling their fathers and other fathers that toiling and providing for the family is not enough in an attempt to push them towards making more time for their children, would you be willing to tell your mothers and other mothers that relationships are not enough because, as they so well know, raising children requires money, and as such, they should provide for their children to the level at which their fathers do? Why do you feel that fathers' roles are less important, that they should tap into traditionally mothers' roles while you don't require mothers to jump into traditionally masculine roles, as in the case of stay-at-home mothers, and at least for those who don't, or those who don't do so enough? While we are requiring men to find a balance, do we ever do so for women, especially stay-at-home moms, to find a balance between the emotional connections and providing for the children? Wouldn't two incomes mean that men don't have to work as hard to provide for their families, thereby making it easier to allocate more time towards bonding with their children? It's nothing until it's done by women, then it becomes everything. So do men intentionally decide to not form relationships with their children or sabotage existing ones? Of course not. Men grow up being told they're supposed to be providers. And if they don't hear enough growing up, then it is repeated to them throughout their dating life and their young adult years until they get married and even afterwards. From the perspective of the man, nothing is more important to a woman and to a family than providing. However, as we have established, the male providing role is super important top of the hierarchy as long as the man is not doing it, or doing it to the liking of the woman. If he is providing everything as required, then it is not enough. Women will tell men to respect stay-at-home moms and wives because their contributions are important to the point of being labeled unpaid labor, while disregarding men's uncompensated resources and how they facilitate women's unpaid labor. It's not important or good enough until it's a woman doing it, then it becomes everything. On the one hand, reminding men how costly it is to raise children when they're pushing for child support, while belittling men's providing roles, terming them as not enough. In making a case for the men who dedicate their entire lives to providing for their family, let's look at what happens when the financial support of children is not adequately provided. This report by UNICEF suggests that children are more likely to live in poverty than adults. They're also more vulnerable to its effects. Children make up half of the 700 million people who live in poverty globally, struggling to survive on less than $2 a day. Children who grow up impoverished often lack the food, sanitation, shelter, healthcare and education they need to survive and thrive. Across the world, about 1 billion children are multidimensionally poor, meaning they lack necessities as basic as nutrition or clean water. Worldwide, the poorest children are twice as likely to die in childhood than their wealthier peers. For those growing up in humanitarian crises, the risks of deprivation and exclusion surge. Even in the world's richest countries, 1 in 7 children still live in poverty. Today, 1 in 4 children in the European Union are at risk of falling into poverty. This other report by American Progress suggests that in America, nearly 11 million children are poor. That's 1 in 7 kids, who make up almost 1/3 of all people living in poverty in America. This number should be unimaginable in one of the world's wealthiest countries, and yet child poverty has remained stubbornly high for decades across the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, which is made up of 37 countries including Denmark, New Zealand, Spain, and the United Kingdom. The United States is consistently ranked as one of the worst in child poverty rates. All4Kids.org suggests that about 15 million children, approximately 21% of all children, in the United States live in low-income families, incomes below the federal poverty line or poverty threshold, a measurement that has been shown to underestimate the needs of working families. Research shows that on average, families require a household income of about twice that amount to cover basic expenses. Children who directly or indirectly experience risk factors associated with poverty have higher odds of experiencing poor health problems as adults, such as heart disease, hypertension, stroke, obesity, certain cancers, and even a shorter life expectancy. In addition to brain development and health risks associated with holding low socioeconomic status, a child's mental health is at risk of being greatly affected as well. Low-income parents and children are more likely to be affected by challenges with mental health and mental illness. These mental health problems often impair overall academic achievement and the ability of children to succeed in school. The effects of poverty can place these children at a higher risk of involvement with child welfare and juvenile justice agencies. Children who were poor are more likely to be raised in impoverished neighborhoods. These types of neighborhoods that have concentrated poverty levels are often associated with difficulties in academics, behavioral and social issues, and worsening health. In addition, these children are more likely to live in neighborhoods where they are exposed to environmental risk factors. These socioeconomic risk factors may include malnutrition, pollution, food insecurity, housing instability, economic hardship, lead exposure, violence, and crime. Worth pointing out is the fact that if men stop providing or are not providing enough, these same women are in the front lines to end unions and even encourage their sisters to do the same. This in accordance with the financial stress theory, which suggests that women, compared to men, are more sensitive to financial problems in a union and are more likely to dissolve a union over the same. Raising divorcee children and the shortcomings of that require an entire video on its own, but in a nutshell, adolescents from single-parent families have been found to engage in greater and earlier sexual activity. Fatherless children are at a dramatically greater risk of drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, suicide, poor educational performance, teen pregnancy, and criminality. 49% of all child abuse cases are committed by single mothers. Teens living in single-parent families are not only more likely to commit suicide but also more likely to suffer from psychological disorders, when compared to teens living in an intact family. Nationally, 15.3% of children living with a never-married mother and 10.7% of children living with a divorced mother have been expelled or suspended from school, compared to only 4.4% of children living with both biological parents. Children living with a never-married mother are more likely to have been treated for emotional problems. Children reared by a divorced or never-married mother are less cooperative and score lower on tests of intelligence than children reared in intact families. Statistical analysis of the behavior and intelligence of these children revealed significant detrimental effects of living in a female-headed household. Growing up in a female-headed household remained a statistical predictor of behavior problems even after adjusting for differences in family income. Children of never-married mothers are more than twice as likely to have been treated for an emotional or behavioral problem. Children with fathers at home tend to do better in school, are less prone to depression, and are more successful in relationships. Children from one-parent families achieve less and get into trouble more than children from two-parent families. Father hunger often afflicts boys age 1 and 2 whose fathers are suddenly and permanently absent. Sleep disturbances, such as trouble falling asleep, nightmares, and night terrors frequently begin within 1 to 3 months after the father leaves home. There are greater levels of aggression in boys from mother-only households than from boys in mother-father households. So women will constantly call out men who don't provide, while at the same time downplay the importance of those who provide and still expect them to do more. Men are working themselves to death to make sure families don't go into financial difficulties, a common divorce catalyst, with the divorces being initiated by women. But guess what? None of it is enough. Men work themselves to death to make sure their children don't live in poverty, but it doesn't matter, or it only matters when they're not doing it. So why are women so comfortable discrediting, belittling, or insulting men, depending on the way you want to look at it. You see, unlike women, men do whatever they're supposed to be doing whether they are appreciated or not, whether they are loved or not. If a woman feels they are not being appreciated, then they often stop doing what they are supposed to be doing for their husband, for her family, and for her home. The same does not apply to men though. Men providing is cast in stone and is not subject to anything, and women understand that. If a man woke up one morning and doesn't do what his family expects him to do in the name of he doesn't feel appreciated, as women typically do, that woman will not only walk, society will support a woman who leaves a marriage because a man is not doing what he's supposed to do. The same society that encourages a woman who doesn't feel appreciated to not attend to her responsibilities in the home and the marriage expects the man to not tie his roles in the home and the marriage to anything. Attend to it diligently with no questions asked and zero expectations.